Hi there and welcome to this video. Today I've managed to get out, even though it's a bit of an interesting weather day. Yesterday here in the UK was a beautiful day, blue skies, about mid 20 degrees, so it's quite warm. Today there was almost Irish mist, a little bit of rain, which has caused all this mist you can see in the background. But one of the great things about photography and videography is it can force you to get out. So I was going to record this piece back in the studio, but I decided to come out for a walk into the North Downs, just outside Guildford, so not too far from my house. Because one of the things that I've been thinking of this week, I've been watching, probably like a lot of you, the rumours around, or not rumours now, around the new Canon R6 and R5, and the rumours around the upcoming Sony A7S III. And that combined with the rumours around the Nikon Z5 release and the impact of that might have on the Z6, Z7 route map, I thought, it got me thinking about the different routes that different manufacturers are taking. So this isn't about bashing any one of them, because actually innovation is great and it's driven from many different sources, and having a vibrant series of manufacturers all taking different routes is a really good thing for us photographers and videographers in driving forward performance, functionality. But they are taking, as I say, very different routes to success and different strategies. If we start with the Canon R5, then you'll have seen from their release and the material around that, that is a 45 megapixel sensor. It's got 12 frames per second mechanical shutter and up to 20 frames per second with an electronic shutter. So some really good performance there for the stills photographers amongst you. That combined with an 8-stop IBIS really gives a high-performing stills camera, you know, on a par with the Z7 in terms of sensor. Where Canon have pushed the boundaries forward is in relation to video though, and you'll have seen they've come in for some flack around this. You know, the camera is capable of 8K. However, as people have pointed out, 8K is time limited due to heat constraints. It also does 4K 120 frames per second in camera, and that combined with 5,940 AF points has some real capability. But it's the 8K limitations that have caught the media. Sadly, the negative points of being temperature constrained, even though many people would struggle to find a real use case for 8K. But it's the heat constraints around the 8K that seem to have captured most of the headlines, sadly, for Canon. This could be a really credible 4K camera, but it's the 8K bit where they've pushed the boundary, they've tested the boundary and found that there are limitations from a heat perspective that have perhaps captured the headlines. The other impact that the increased processing of 8K versus 4K and 4K 120 frames per second is on battery life. Here we're seeing that Canon are saying that using the EVF, which is a 5.76 million pixel EVF, so pretty, you know, pixel rich EVF, you'll get about 320 shots, and using the LCD on the back you'll get 490 shots, so pretty comparable with what we see in the Z series cameras, for example, as a comparator. So it's obvious that Canon have really pushed, they went for the headlines which were around 8K video, and there are still some constraints around that from a heat management perspective that Canon may, with the as time goes on, overcome. If we look at Sony's approach to the up-and-coming A7S Mark III, they're taking a slightly differentiated approach, with the A7R range really being focused at the high-resolution stills market, and the A7S really becoming a more video-centric camera. So they are not trying to do everything with one camera, they're trying to differentiate and make one a video-centric camera and the other a more still-centric camera, although both are hybrid. So if we look at the rumours, and these are rumours at the moment, I think by the time this video comes out we'll be pretty close to the launch date of the A7S III, but as of today they are rumours. We're talking about a very high bitrate design here, so up to 600 megabits per second, capable of doing a lot in camera. They were talking about a maximum ISO of 409,600, so real low light performance for video, and 16-bit RAW, whereas the Z series, I think it's a 12-bit RAW. You know, Sony are really pushing it to a 16-bit RAW. We're talking about 15 stops dynamic range potentially. And all of this being done off a 12 megapixel sensor. So whereas Canon are trying to push that 45 megapixel sensor up into the 8K territory, Sony are really thinking, actually, at the moment perhaps 8K is a little bit unattainable due to the heat issues, the processor power required, the battery impact, and actually does the market really have a use case for 8K other than perhaps a small portion of the market? So therefore they've gone for a 12 megapixel sensor, which is really focused on 4K. So it does 4K 120 frames per second, potentially it will do 10-bit 422 in-camera, RAW HDMI, and it will have, both cameras have got fully articulated screens, and the Sony is rumoured to have not just a 5.76 million pixel EVF, but a 9.44 million pixel EVF. Now, because Sony are focusing on the video market and really focusing on 4K, they're potentially going for an SD card approach with a UHS 2 card or pair of cards in it, whereas Canon in the R5 is going for a CF Express approach. Sony are going for a passive heat management and cooling approach. So they've designed the A7S Mark III around the end-to-end video capabilities. So it's a very different approach. As I say, we're seeing Canon really trying to stretch that 45 megapixel, really credible stills sensor out to 8K, and perhaps finding that at this point in time, the heat is the limiting factor. Whereas Sony are differentiating between the A7R and the A7S ranges, and we'll probably see in the next A7R iteration, perhaps, you know, pushing that up higher megapixels slightly, because obviously Sony have got I think it's a 61 megapixel sensor that's available. So what does this mean for Nikon shooters? You know, I talked in previous videos about the Z7S or the Z6S, and will it go for 8K? So, you know, Nikon has got an opportunity here. They could go down the Canon route, and they really then have to try and create a pair of hybrid cameras with the Z7S focusing on 8K, but will they overcome the heat issue and battery life and the processing issue? Or do they differentiate and make the Z7S a more still-centric camera like Sony have done with their A7R range, and make the Z6 a more video-centric range and put more video capability in there off the 24 megapixel sensor? So really differentiating between the two. I think it's an interesting challenge for Nikon. It's weighing up the different route maps. What can you actually achieve? You know, will they learn from what Canon have found in that they've tried to push the boundaries in video capability to 8K, but actually there are some limitations which have got them some unfair, in some ways, negative press. You know, I had a Sony RX100 Mark V, and I bought that because I wanted a small camera, a pocket camera, to be able to do 4K video. But what I found was actually that was limited by heat, and you were limited at between 4 and 5 minutes. And it was a real pain. It was unusable for anything more than a 4K clip, because it took so long to cool down in between clips. You couldn't really just pause for 30 seconds and then start again. You had to wait, you know, quite a considerable time to then be able to record another 4-minute clip. So that really affected the use case. So, you know, I think Nikon has got a bit of a fork in the road here. Which way do they go? What do you think they should be doing? Where would you prefer them to go? Would you be interested in a more differentiated approach like Sony's? Or do you want to see them really pushing the boundaries with the potentially the Z7S and really pushing up towards that 8K space? For me personally, I think the differentiated route is probably the better route to go, because whilst We all want hybrid functionality in our cameras. We want everything in one camera. I think we're going to struggle increasingly to achieve that as we move forward in video and stills. I think it's possible to, as Sony are doing, differentiate more and have perhaps the Z6 becoming a more video-centric set of capability while still being a credible stills camera, and the Z7 becoming a more stills focused set of functionality, but still being credible in being able to record quality 4K video. As I'm doing today, I'm using my Z7 with the 14 to 31mm lens on it. So having bodies that are more focused and more specialized, but then having a shared set of lens ecosystem and other ecosystems to go around it could be really powerful. So it'll be interesting to see as Nikon move forward this year and announce the next generation of the Z6 and Z7 and add the Z5 to that, which way they go. As I say, it'd be great to hear what your thoughts are. Which way do you think they should go strategically? Drop them in the comments below and we can get a bit of a dialogue going. As always, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, as always, do hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and you'll be notified of other videos. And I'll leave you here today in the North Downs of Surrey, a little bit wet. I've got drops of water dripping off of me all over me, so I hope that hasn't affected the quality of the video, and I look forward to seeing you in a future video.